The NBA's back. It's Premier Week, which means I figured it's as good of time as any for me to lock in my award predictions for the upcoming 2025-2026 NBA season. I was thinking about how I wanted to do this video, and I didn't want to just name my favorite for each award, because, let's face it, there's some pretty obvious picks for favorites for some of these awards, but I also wanted to shed some light, if you will, on some other players who I think could find themselves in this award conversation at the end of the year. So without further ado, let's get into each award. I'm going to start with Rookie of the Year. I think this one's kind of obvious. Cooper Flagg's the undeniable pick here. He's coming into the league with a perfect opportunity. Playing for a Dallas Mavericks team who's looking to compete in the Western Conference, it just gives him a unique situation to be in for a number one overall pick. Well, typically when you get drafted number one, you're coming to a team that's not exactly great or not exactly looking to win right away. But with Cooper Flagg this season, he's coming into a team that they've got nothing else other than to win. They just traded Luka Doncic, and they're going all in on winning right away. They've got a pretty old roster. Obviously, the injury to Kyrie kind of stifles their hopes this season for a championship, but overall, that's their goal. And it's a unique position for a rookie like Cooper Flagg to be in, but I think it's good for him, because when you're in this position, it reminds me of like a Jason Tatum, where he came into the Celtics and right away was in the playoffs, playing against LeBron James, playing against Joel Embiid, playing against Jimmy Butler. And that kind of experience, especially so early on in your career, like coming in right away, you're a rookie and you're playing against the best players on the world on the biggest stage in the world, that is super important. And I think it really can help propel you to that next level as a winning basketball player, not just somebody who goes out there and gets buckets, but somebody who wants to really put their mark on winning basketball. And I think that's what Cooper Flagg wants to do. He's shown, from everything we've seen, he's shown that he wants to be the best, and he wants to compete at the highest level and win championships, and that's his main goal. Obviously, that's kind of the main goal for most players when in the league, but is to win the big one. But for Cooper Flagg, I think he's in such a good position with the Mavericks to get that experience right away and to really know what it takes to be a winning team, because you can be a good team on paper, but when it really comes down to it in the moments of the playoffs and in the finals, you have to know what it takes to win, I feel like, or at least be willing to do what it takes to win. And part of that is knowing what it takes to win. And I think when you come in and you're starting as a rookie and you're getting that experience, it's obviously invaluable to your development as a player. And Cooper Flagg has already shown that he's willing to put in the work and willing to play and perform on the biggest stages against these players. Like we saw him in the select game a couple years ago or a year ago against Team USA for the Olympics, and we heard all about that and saw how he was able to kind of show what he can do and kind of put on display exactly what he's all about in front of the best players in the world and against the best players in the world. And yeah, I think what he does as a player translates to the NBA right away. What we saw from him at Duke is something we can expect from him right away in the NBA. You can kind of see, like, he's got the body for the NBA. Like, he's got a 6'10" lanky frame, good size, good strength. Obviously, there's going to be some hurdles for him. He's not going to be perfect right out of the gate coming into the NBA. No player is. Heck, he's not going to be perfect when he's at his peak. No, no player is ever perfect. But he's such a well-rounded player already in his career. He should be still at Duke, considering he reclassified. He's such a well-rounded player for his age, and he already knows that he needs to do more than just score the basketball to be an impactful player, and he's shown a willingness to work hard on the defensive end, and obviously he's physically capable to play defense, to play good defense and be a good defender, and I think he can be right out of the gate. And I think also when you look at his ability as a playmaker and a connector, obviously he's not going to average 12 assists and be LeBron James right away. Obviously LeBron James didn't average 12 assists either, but you know what I mean, and be a world-class playmaker. But I think he has what it takes to be a good, serviceable playmaker and a good connector for a Dallas Mavericks team that is without Kyrie Irving, who is also a good connector in himself. And I think he can really, at the very least, raise the floor for this Mavericks team this season as somebody who can come in right away and rebound, play solid defense, and handle the ball and make a play or two for them. Obviously, the question is kind of how good can he be this year? I don't think he's going to be a 25-point per game scorer. I think a lot of what he does is kind of more of that connecting role, where he's going to go out and average 7 rebounds. Like, I could see him average an easy 15, 7, and 4 assists while providing good defense on a team that could, I don't know, be top. They're fighting for a top 4 seed and hoping at least for that home court advantage come playoff time. Obviously, we'll see if that's where they end up, but that's their goal, and I think Cooper Flagg can really do that, and for them. And then going forward, I mean, he's your franchise player. You traded away Luka Doncic, and you were gifted with this number 1 overall pick. So he's obviously your next guy up. He's your franchise player. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how much they go through him. We've seen a lot of actions from him, from the team going through him through the preseason, which is good to see. We like to see him get involved and be involved in the offense as both a ball handler, but also coming off of picks and really just getting to his spots. And I think that's what's going to be important for him this year is being efficient in his shooting, and can he be efficient in his shooting? Because that's obviously the biggest question mark is his 3-point shooting. I don't think we're gonna have too much of a concern, truthfully, even if he's not. I don't expect him to be a knockdown shooter right away. And even if he never develops into a knockdown shooter, I still see a very long and successful career for Cooper Flagg in the NBA. But if he does become a knockdown shooter, then we're talking about a superstar and the generational talent that people were heralding him as when he was getting drafted and in college. Now, for my dark horse for Rookie of the Year, I think I've got Nick Clifford for the Sacramento Kings. for me, he was the steal of the draft. Going at 24, I think it's a blessing in disguise for the Kings to be able to come away with him in the draft. I was super high on him coming out of Colorado State, and I'm super high with him as a member of the Kings. Obviously, there's some question marks when you look at the Kings roster and what is going on over there with Sacramento and LaVine, Sabonis, and DeRozan, but there's talent there, but really the question mark is how do they come together and as a team? And there's obviously a lot of holes that can keep them from being a consistently winning team. Your three top guys are going to get you wins. Like LaVine can score 30 on every given night. DeRozan will go out there and hit game winners. Sabonis will play solid. He's an all-star player. But really, how does it come together around the edges? And I think that's where Nick Clifford comes in. I think that's what he does. He's going to do that, help that situation. Obviously, he's a rookie, so you don't necessarily expect him to bring the team together, but he's one of those players that doesn't necessarily need the ball to be effective, right? And that's something you like to see in a rookie. Obviously, he's a 4-year college guy, so he's kind of has that experience as somebody who gets it in a system as opposed to getting the game ran through him. He doesn't necessarily he's not going to touch the ball on every possession playing with guys like Sabonis and LaVine and DeRozan. And then they've also added Westbrook, so those are all guys who need the ball in their hands. Nick Clifford's not that. He can work off of those guys, and I think the Kings need that this season, and so I think he can slide into that role perfectly. The question, again, they're not going to probably be a very good team. So when you look at Nick Clifford being compared to his other peers as rookies, I assume Cooper Flagg, his team's probably going to be better. I would guess Dylan Hopel, his team's probably going to be better. But in terms of players on a team that's not going to be all that good, and I mean, this Kings team obviously is trying to compete, but again, I don't know how well that's going to turn out for them this season. But I think it's a good position for Nick Clifford to be in. He's going to come into the NBA right away and be an impactful player, especially when you think about the potential for trades here with this team. LaVine, DeRozan, I don't know what their value looks like in the trade market. I don't know what the Kings could get for them. But obviously, I think, especially if they do come out of the gate struggling and the talent isn't amounting to wins, I think the Kings need to and are going to look to trade LaVine and Sabonis, and that opens up a good opportunity for Nick Clifford to come in and be that player to fill that role that when they trade those guys, or if they trade those guys. Obviously, again, you question the value, and if they trade them, but I could easily see that come March, one of LaVine, DeRozan, Sabonis, all three of them, heck, aren't on that team. And when you look at this Kings roster, there's not really, yes, you've got Keegan Murray, who he just got an extension, good for him. But there's not a whole lot for them to hang their hats on in terms of the future. I don't know what the Keegan Murray ceiling is, but I think Nick Clifford is one of those guys that they could rely on to be that next guy for them come the new era, I guess, in Sacramento. Because I don't think that LaVine or Sabonis or DeRozan are in their long-term plans. Obviously, given the age of DeRozan, you expect him not to be in that long-term plan. And if they aren't in that long-term plan, then who is the next person for them? Maybe he's not. Maybe they're not on the team yet. Like they're gonna have another good pick this season probably. So maybe it comes this in the draft this year or whatever. But I think as of right now, what we have on this roster, I think Nate Clifford is that next guy for them. So I think he could get a lot of good opportunity this season, especially if the Kings move on from LaVine, Sabonis, and DeRozan, or all three of them. For the next award, I'm going to go with Coach of the Year, and I think this year it's going to be Mike Brown for the New York Knicks. Coming into the season, I think the Knicks are the best team in the East, and a lot of that success will be attributed to him towards the end of the year as he's a new coach. A lot of that new coach bias. They were already a good team last year, but they've only got better this year. And I think they're in a great position to be at the top of the Eastern Conference, like not just the second seed with the Cavs, but like the best team and make in the East and making it to the Eastern Conference Finals and the Finals and that kind of thing. That's the kind of season you expect from the New York Knicks, kind of. And if that's what they do, then I think Mike Brown is probably the favorite. Like, there are other guys, obviously. You look at somebody like David Adelman in Denver or Ime Udoka. I really considered Ime for Coach of the Year. But I like the potential for 60 wins in New York and in an Eastern Conference. I think they could really shine over there. And Mike Brown being a new coach, having new additions of Jordan Clarkson, Yabusele to really bring together the team around the edges, as opposed to what they had last season with Tom Thibodeau and kind of just like relying on the star players to play all 40 minutes of the game. But what I really am looking forward with Mike Brown is I think he has a different idea of how to use Karl-Anthony Towns in this Knicks offense. And I think that's kind of what I'm really looking forward to, is what he can get out of Karl Towns. And hopefully adds a new layer to their offense, which sometimes last year seemed like it was just give the ball to Brunson. I think it's a perfect position for him to be in as a coach. Coming in, they won 51 games last season and made it to the conference finals. And the Eastern Conference is weaker, I guess, than it was last year with the injuries to Tatum and Halliburton. So you have questions about the Cavs and Celtics and the Pacers. Obviously, there are teams like the Cavs, like the Magic, like the Bucks, who I think people are sleeping on, who can be as good as them and rival them in that Eastern Conference. But I think the Knicks are the best team in the East, and I think Mike Brown will get a lot of that credit for them being that best team in the East at the end of the season. Now for my dark horse, this one might be a bit of a long shot, but I guess that's the point of it being a dark horse at the end of the day. I've got Joe Mazzulla. Yeah, the Celtics are without Tatum for probably the whole season. I know he's had some pretty promising videos on his rehab, but I'm going to guess he's out for the whole season. Even without Tatum, the Celtics have some talented players, so I think they could be a good team. It's just a matter of this is the worst team we've seen Joe Mazzulla have. Like, ever since he's come to the Celtics as the head coach, he's had an all-star roster up and down, like a championship team. And so he's always been able to kind of rely on them a little bit to carry the load, especially Jason Tatum. And like his system, it kind of has in the past at least allowed for it to be mostly the players that he's relying on. But this season, he doesn't have the talent he's had in the past. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what he kind of changes about his philosophy, especially offensively. Like, in the past, it's always been about hunting the best matchup, and he doesn't have, like, Jason Tatum was one of the best players in the league at getting a favorable matchup and exploiting that matchup. And I think without him, there isn't, and without players like Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis to kind of make it impossible for teams to really send help on players like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It'll be interesting to see if they can get those favorable matchups at the rate that they have in the past. From what we've seen in the preseason, they're continuing to shoot the ball at the rate that they did last year, which we'll see how that pays out, because they obviously don't have the shooters that they have had in the past. But I think they still have willing shooters up and down this roster, and I think it's just a matter of, do teams trust these guys? Are they gonna close out as much as they have in the past? And I think you'll see it be more difficult for JB and Derek White to create, because they are probably going to see more help than they have in the past, for sure, considering the guys who are around them as shooters. With that said, I think this is a great opportunity for Joe Mazzulla to show that he can be a championship coach and adjust. And obviously the Celtics aren't a championship team this year, especially without Jason Tatum, but it's an opportunity for Joe to show that he can run, that hasn't just been relying on his players, that he's actually a good coach and can make changes and adjustments when he needs to, and can play to the strength of his roster. Because in the past he's been able to just kind of rely on his players, which you can't really blame him when you have the roster that they've had in the past, right? And the talent that they've had, especially shooting wise. You can't blame him for saying just shoot the ball, like just that's our advantage. And exactly, like that's good coaching for him to say that. But now, when they don't have that advantage necessarily, is it still advantageous for the Celtics to shoot that many threes, to play that style of basketball? And it's a good opportunity for him to show it, that he can do that he can make adjustments. And if the Celtics are successful this season as like a top team in the West, top team in the East, then, and it greatly exceeding the people's expectations, I could easily see him getting Coach of the Year buzz for sure. Next, Clutch Player of the Year is always an interesting one to try and predict, because so much of it comes down to clutch opportunities. Like, we all know Shea is one of the clutchest players in the league, but he's probably not going to get much recognition for the Clutch Player of the Year, because his team is so good that he doesn't play down the stretch. Like, he doesn't play clutch games because his team is winning 95% of the time, right? So he doesn't really get as many opportunities as a player like an Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic, who do play in those clutch moments and have the opportunity to really showcase their excellence at that moment in the game. It's not saying that Shea can't play there or doesn't play well as those guys. It's just we don't see it. The stats don't say it. Don't like they'll for him to for people to compare, and so players like that just kind of get lost in the shuffle. And I think that said, I've got Anthony Edwards winning Clutch Player of the Year this season. The Timberwolves are a team that they're going to find themselves in some close games this season, competing with in the Western Conference for a playoff spot. I think this is a team that's going to find themselves in a lot of close games down the stretch, potentially a lot of overtime games, and Anthony Edwards is the guy for them down the stretch. Like nobody else is going to be getting the ball unless it's Edwards passing it to them because he's got all the other team's attention. I also think his versatility offensively in terms of what he can do, obviously scoring, we know he can score on all three levels, but also his improvements that he's made as a playmaker is also very helpful for him down the stretch because he does get so much attention as a scorer that he has to also make the right play. It's not necessarily just who makes the most shots in the clutch. It's about who makes the right play, who wins their team the game, and who is most effective. And so that's why, I mean, a player like Luka or Jalen Brunson or Jokic are great options because you know that they're going to make the right play down the stretch, right? Not just scoring the ball, but also playmaking wise, and in some cases as on the defensive side of the ball as well. Obviously, some of those guys I named aren't defenders, but Anthony Edwards is a good example of somebody who can make that play defensively as well, and that's why I think I give him the edge over a player like Luka or Trae Young or Jalen Brunson, this Clutch Player of the Year. For my dark horse for Clutch Player, kind of coincides with my dark horse for Coach of the Year, because I'm going with Derek White. Some of you might be a little confused by my pick, and say that he's maybe not even the best clutch player on his team. I don't know what the perception of Jaylen Brown in the clutch really is, in terms of like what fans say, but I've watched a lot of Celtics basketball over the years, more than any other team in the league for sure. And when it comes down to the fourth quarter, Derek White is the guy for the Celtics. Obviously, Jason Tatum is the guy, but when it comes like I don't know what it is. I'm not sure how to describe it. He has this uncanny ability to just be in the right place at the right time on both ends of the floor. And when you think about the style of play that the Celtics have under Joe Mazzulla, I talked about it a little earlier with the Coach of the Year, it's a lot of like situational, reading the defense and just freelance basically, and being in the right place at the right time. So it kind of favors Derek White as a player more so than Jaylen Brown. And I think, especially without Jason Tatum there, Derek White as that player who can make the right play time and time again, and I feel like is more reliable as a ball handler and like just decision maker down the stretch than Jaylen Brown. No offense, nothing against Jaylen Brown. I like Jaylen Brown. I think he's a great offensive player. I think he's underrated in terms of his creation, and part of that comes down to playing with Jason Tatum and him taking a lot of that opportunity. And honestly, I think he's never really had an opportunity, at least as good as this, in his career to showcase that. But for me, I think Derek White is still going to be that guy for the Celtics down the stretch this season. He's just the way that they play, it feels more advantageous for him than it does for Jaylen Brown. And again, you kind of question if the Celtics are going to be any good. But if they can be, I think, again, they're going to be another team that's going to find themselves in a lot of close games. And Derek White is going to be a big portion of that. Because, again, you think about what they have, there's some guys around the edges that are questionable. You talk about the big man position, who do they trust there, who are they going to play down the stretch, and I think Derek White is one of those players when he's handling the ball, he can make the most out of maybe not having, like, I'm thinking specifically like for like picking walls and that kind of thing. He can make the most with his navigation, not necessarily having the best screener, like not necessarily having somebody who's going to take that attention away from him as a lower man. I think he can still kind of make the most of those opportunities in those situations, and that's why I think Derek White would be the pick for clutch player of the year for the Celtics this season. For sixth man of the year, I'm going DeAndre Hunter. I mean, he came so very close to winning it last year, and I think with a full season with the Cavs, he has an even better opportunity to win it this year. He's one of those players that just seems to be more impactful when he's coming off the bench. Like, when he first came to the Cavs, I think he played one game on the starting lineup, and then the Cavs were like, yeah, let's just bench him. And it's not anything against him. I think that's just, there's some players that just play better against those second units, and I think he's one of those guys, and it's important to have those guys, and I think he's an extremely important part to this Cleveland Cavaliers' success, especially this season as they're looking to kind of get over that hump and really show that they're the best team in the Eastern Conference, especially with the down year. We've talked a lot about the Jason Tatum injury and the Celtics and the Pacers. We'll talk about the Pacers a little bit later when I get to most improved, but I think the Cavs are in a position where they can really solidify their spot at the top of the East. Obviously, they have the Knicks as well, but the Cavs as a team I'm going to guess they think they're better than the than the Knicks, and as they should. They're a good team, and I think they could be considered the best team in the Eastern Conference as well. And I mean, you saw what they were able to do last year. If they can do that again, or even improve upon that in the regular season, then I think DeAndre Hunter is obviously going to be a big part of that, both scoring wise and what he does as a connector. I think he's a valuable piece for the Cavs, obviously, and that's why he's my choice for sixth man. And for my dog horse, I went with another up-and-coming shooter in the Eastern Conference, and that's Grady Dick for the Toronto Raptors. I'm not even sure if he's going to come off the bench all season for the Raptors. I feel like the lineup is still kind of in flux and could change, obviously with injuries and who knows what could happen, but I feel like they're not entirely, Doko's not entirely sure what he has. Like, they're still trying to figure out what he has in a player like OJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. I'm not even sure if come March, OJ Barrett's going to be on the team. And if he isn't, then that obviously opens up a starting opportunity for Grady Dick. But for now, as the team stands, he's going to be coming off the bench. And for a Raptors team that is looking to make the playoffs this year and be a lot better than they were last year, he is such an important aspect to them taking that jump to being a better team, because the biggest question mark for the Raptors is that 3-point shooting. Like, they were at the bottom of the league last year in terms of frequency and efficiency, and if they want to make the playoffs, even in what seems like is going to be a weak Eastern Conference this season, they're going to have to improve shooting the basketball. So if Grady Dick can shoot the ball effectively, which he's shown he can do, like I think he's the best shooter on the team, and if he can be that leader 3-point shooting wise and really help propel the Raptors to be, I mean, I don't expect them to be a good 3-point shooting team, but to even not be the worst, like among the worst in basketball, I could see the Raptors making the playoffs. And if the Raptors make the playoffs, Grady's still coming off the bench at that point, I think he could get 6-man of the year votes for sure. Next, defensive player of the year. This one I feel is real obvious. Victor Wembanyama. He's my favorite. He kind of has to be. I feel like he's everybody's favorite. It feels like he's going to be a shoo-in for this award every year for the next decade plus. Just with what he does on the defensive end of the floor, the length that he has. Like, not to discredit guys like Anthony Davis, Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, Bam Adebayo. Those guys are all good defensive players, but they don't have the physical gifts that Wemby has as a 7'5". I guess he's 7'7" now. I don't know. Man, like he's like the fact that he's only 21 and is already as smart defensively, I think that's what really, for me, makes me think that he's like going to be the best defensive player, potentially the best defensive player we've ever seen, especially like in a big man. I mean, obviously he's not, like, you have some question marks about the injuries. You know the history of freakishly tall players and the injuries, like you talk about a Kristaps Porzingis, a Yao Ming, but from what we've seen, like, yeah, he obviously missed a good portion of last season, but that's not the same, like, he was out with a blood clot. That's not really the same kind of thing. I'm not a medical individual. I'm not a sports doctor, a athletic therapist. I'm not anything like that. So I'm not have any idea really, but doesn't feel like a type of injury that is gonna reoccur throughout his career or potentially flare up again, right? And like, I mean, obviously it's big if you talk about health, but I think he could be healthy. Like I think he's fully capable of being healthy throughout his career. I think what we've seen from him in terms of his training and trying to be on top of that, I think makes me believe that he could withstand the rigors of a whole NBA season. Now, my dark horse for DPOY is Jalen Suggs. That's good. The Mavericks are looking to be one of the contending teams out east this season, and I think a large portion of them being able to find that success as a team comes from Jalen Suggs. The big question mark for Suggs is, can he play enough games to qualify? And I'm not sure. As a Suggs fan, I sure hope so. Because when he's playing, he's one of the great heart and hustle players in the entire league. And playing for a great defensive team in the Magic puts him in a good position to get some real recognition for his abilities as a point of attack defender. He reminds me a lot of Avery Bradley in terms of his lateral quickness and his ability to stay with defenders and fight through screens and recover quickly. His hands are great. He's one of the best shot blocking guards in the league, and I think he's a real sneaky pick for DPOY if he can stay healthy. And obviously, if the Magic are as good defensively as they were last year. For most improved player, I'm going Andrew Nembhard. I've been on him for most improved ever since Tyrese went down with his injury in the finals. I think he would have been on 6-man if Tyrese was healthy. But with that injury, I think he now has the opportunity to step in, be that point guard for this team, who obviously they're going to take a step back this season, but I think they're still a good team, and he has the opportunity to really showcase his ability as a playmaker and as a scorer, especially without Tyrese and having lost Tonal. The Pacers are going to need a big jump in production if they want to stay afloat, right? Having lost Hallie for this season. And I'm not sure if they're going to be a super good team, but I think that Nembhard could still win that 6-man or that most improved player, sorry, even if the Pacers aren't super good. I think what Nembhard brings to the table is something that is starting caliber for really any team throughout basketball. And so him now having the opportunity to showcase that and for an entire season without really anybody getting in his way, like Tyrese is out for the whole year, so there's not really anybody in front of him. There's not going to be anybody in front of him to take away his possessions as a point guard and as the facilitator of that team. So I think he could really help them stay afloat this year, and if he does, then I think he's definitely my pick for most improved player. As for my dark horse pick for most improved, I'm all in on Modest Bazelis. The reason he's my pick is because even though he's going into the second season, and players going into that second season don't typically win most improved player, like I think we've had it happen twice in the last 25 years that a second season player has come in and won the award. But I think if there's a third player to do it, it's going to be Modest. Take what he did at the end of last season and add it to what we've seen so far from him this preseason, and I think it's clear that he's the next man up for this Bulls team. And I think obviously we didn't see Kobe White in the preseason, but I think the Bulls understand that he is their best young player, and have finally now given him the opportunity to showcase that. Like, remember, coming out of high school, Modest was ranked top 3 in the draft class. And obviously that was before he went to the G League Ignite. Well, he, let's face it, couldn't throw a lock in the ocean. He shot 27% from 3 for the Ignite, so I understand why he fell to number 11. But for the Bulls to get him at 11, that's like really good scouting and good drafting, because he has that top 3 talent. And I think we've really seen that through the early part of his career, that there was a reason he was ranked at number 3, and that's not just because in high school he was supposed to be a lights out shooter, and then going into the G League, which kind of felt like the Ignite kind of plummeted a lot of the players' draft stocks, but kind of felt like going to Chicago, he had the opportunity to really showcase that he was willing to work and put in the effort to be the kind of player that he's talked about he wants to be. Like, he's talked about wanting to be the best player in the league and winning most improved player and having making all defensive team this year. And obviously that's big if, but this season. But I think down the road, with the amount of effort that he puts into his body, we've seen him progress so much in terms of his strength through just his first season in the NBA, that I think he can become that kind of player. But I also think I really like his mentality, and he has such confidence in himself that he knows what he needs to do in order to be a successful NBA player, but he also has the confidence in himself and in the abilities to know that he can do it as well. And so it's just kind of putting it all together, and then the fact that he plays for Bulls team, which it's going to be should be at least all in on him for, in terms of development, because they don't really have much else in terms of their future. Like, they've got other good players, but I think Giddy's a good pairing alongside him, but I think it's more of like he elevates he elevates Matas more than Giddy is kind of the face of the team. So I think in terms of development, the Bulls really focus in on Buzelis and giving him the chance to really flourish and be the best player on the team. And I think we've seen that so far. Like, he had a usage rate of 18% through last season, and that's up 24% through the first 5 preseason games. And obviously it's preseason, so you don't really know what that looks like going into the regular season and beyond. But I think it's a good step in the right direction to really see that he's getting more opportunity and is being more involved in the offense that the Bulls run, because last season he was more of just a stand in the corner and wait for his opportunity kind of guy, whereas this year we've seen them actually run plays for him and try and get him open and like downhill, and that's a positive progression in my book for Matas Buzelis. And finally, MVP. I think there's a lot of players you could say could win this award. I mean, Jokic and Shea are always going to be the easy answer, right? I mean, the numbers that Jokic puts up on a season-to-season basis is, I mean, they're historic every year. I feel like he's breaking new records, and so it's obvious. I couldn't argue with you if you put him up there. And then Shea, coming off the Finals MVP and the Ling last year, he's looking like one of the best players in the league, like if not the best player in the league. So for him to, obviously he's going to be in that conversation for MVP. But for me, I feel like this season there's really one player that stands out as like being the definition of the most valuable player for his team, and that's Giannis. Like, the Bucks roster, let's face it, it's not very good. They've got some all-right players like Turner, and I like AJ Green and Bobby Portis. Those are all good players, but this is not a team that anybody would talk about as anything other than a top of the lottery team if it wasn't for Giannis. We all know what Giannis is capable of. The question is, how good can the Bucks be as a team this year? Giannis can't win MVP if he's playing on the 7th seed or something like that. But if they find themselves towards the top of the Eastern Conference, which I think is a real possibility for them, I think he could definitely be in that conversation. It's kind of reminiscent of Jokic winning his MVP in 2022, I believe, because his team dealt with injuries, and they only won 48 games that year. Obviously, Giannis's team isn't necessarily dealing with injuries, but they're bad, and I would say they're comparable in terms of talent around him with the injuries to Jokic and to Jokic's team with the Nuggets and just the state of the Bucks. So I think if Giannis can do kind of like what Jokic did and win 48 to 50 games this season with the Bucks, then I think he should get that recognition, and I think he will. Now, moving on to my dark horse for MVP, this comes down to one thing, and that's health. I chose Anthony Davis. I think when he's healthy, he's a walking 27 and 10, and potentially the best two-way player in the league. I also think, given what happened last year with the trade and like the whole like attitude around him coming in and being the face of the Mavericks as opposed to what they had before in Luka Doncic. I think he's really has that chip on his shoulder, and he has something to prove that he can be the best player on a championship team, and to prove that Nico Harrison didn't make some grave mistake by trading for him. I also think he's obviously in the conversation for defensive player of the year, and when you have somebody who's can post 25 plus points per game and also be in a candidate for defensive player of the year, I think, and is also playing for the Mavericks, who could be a top team in the Western Conference. Obviously, Kyrie, again, he's out for probably the whole season, but even without him, I think they can at least be competitive in the Western Conference. And I think Davis's candidacy as an MVP comes down obviously to his health. Can he play enough games to qualify? But also how successful can the Mavericks be? And obviously those two things I think coincide as well quite a bit. Like, the Mavs are going to struggle if Davis is out, but if he's on the court and he's putting together MVP numbers, then the Mavericks could look pretty good this year. So those are my picks for each award, and my dark horse picks as well. Comment down below if you agree with my picks, disagree, and let me know what kind of videos you want to see from me this NBA season. I'm going to be talking hoops all season long, and not just the NBA. We can talk college ball, WNBA, Unrivaled, doesn't matter. We're talking all hoops. So don't forget, if you want to talk hoops with me, subscribe, and I'll see you next video.